Hello, 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 hello. You ready for some podcasting? Welcome to In the Closet with. It's once again Pride Month, and this year I wanted to celebrate with my fellow creatives. Throughout June, this stream will be guested by a variety of people where we talk about the queer experience. Today, I am joined by Joe, he, they, also known as Joseph Strum on Twitter. Hello, Joe. You ready?
Yes.
Sweet. Why don't you
Sweet.
introduce yourself?
Oh, hey. It's me. I'm Joe. Oh, I'm I'm suddenly gonna not have words as soon as we start this.
Oh, it's fine. I never have
Um,
words, so you're Gucci.
yeah. So I'm Joe. I'm at Speak with Animals, pretty much everywhere that matters, like here on Twitch. At Joseph R. Strom, all the other places. And yeah, I'm a dad. I'm a musician, producer. I stream games on Twitch. Lately, that's been a lot of Minecraft and Resident Evil. Um, I just finished Resident Evil 5 by watching the cutscenes instead of actually playing the game because I got tired of it. Um, and yeah, my big project I've been working on for a while is the Fanet, which is this little indie record label production company thing I started with a couple of my friends. And we've got a new podcast coming out soon called Lore Club. That's all of my I've got way too many things going on. I'm bi/pan, probably demisexual, occasionally gender questioning, and yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Lovely. We've kind of gone full circle, haven't we? Because I guested your podcast a million years ago.
Yes, yeah, like for like, which I still there's a piece of me just in the back of my brain that wants to bring that podcast back. Maybe it'll happen at some point, but yeah, that was so much fun.
Oh my goodness. I think if I had gone back and listened to that episode today, I wouldn't have recognized myself.
Yeah,
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 no.
it was a totally different time.
Yeah, it was. It was like in 20, was it 17 or 18?
Ooh, I don't know. You know what? I have the website pulled up.
I'm
uh,
almost tempted to say 17, you know?
yeah, I want to say it was because I remember we did one of the episodes. Ooh, I don't know. Because one of the episodes we did was during election night here in the US, which would have made that 2016. And I think we interviewed you during like the first season. So it would have had to have been 2016 or 2017.
Yeah, I'm I'm tempted to say 17 because I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure I lived in the apartment I did at the time that I'm recalling doing this in. And I
Uh-huh.
didn't live there in 16. I lived there in 17. But either way, it's a million years ago, and with everything that's happened in between, not just like on a personal level, but on a worldwide level, it feels like a different life.
hmm yeah, 2018, September of 2018.
Wow, it
That's when it
was
was.
it was 18. Wow.
Yeah, you were a third guest.
The honor. Well, not to like put you on the spot, but if you if you rewind this, please have me back and let me redeem myself.
Yes, yeah, we need to do that at some point. I mean, you know, maybe we can have you on Lore Club. I'm always in need of new voices.
Oh
That'd be fun.
goodness. What do you do? What do you do on? We're probably gonna talk more about it later on, but
Yeah, no, we can talk a little about it now. Yeah, it's consuming like all of my thoughts lately. So yeah, basically, you know how in originally the Elder Scrolls games were the inspiration for this, which I'm
oh
sure we both love.
yeah yeah yeah.
Um, but in games in general, like usually RPGs and stuff like that, you'll find like books of lore in the game, and like only really hardcore fans actually go through and read those,
Mm,
you know, during their playthroughs, or people who just really like reading. But I realized that as much as I loved these games and as much as I like sort of generally knew about the lore from like the Elder Scrolls and like Halo and Doom and all of these other games that have like in-game sort of logs and text and stuff that you can find.
Mm-hmm.
I never actually like read a lot of this stuff. So I was like, what if we took those stories and we like performed them? We did like actual voice actors and like music and sound effects and stuff and put those out as like almost like
Oh.
audiobooks. So we're doing that for that's what Lore Club is basically. It's these audio productions of lore from video games. And we'll probably do like interviews and table talks about stuff too. But right now we're going through the 36 lessons of Vivek. So when we go live, which should actually be next week, I think I'll be launching the first episode.
Uh-huh.
We'll have weekly uploads after that. But yeah, we've been going through the 36 lessons of Vivek in the Elder Scrolls,
Oh, that's
and
so cool.
it's been a lot of fun. I'm voicing Vivek, and it's been very silly.
Oh my god, that's so cool. I love that. I remember, so my first venture into Elder Scrolls was Morrowind because I'm old.
Yes, same.
And Morrowind like changed how I perceived games for sure. And I'm pretty sure I actually did read a lot of the books back then because I was just obsessed with the world. It was such a like so much thought had gone into creating this universe and you could feel it. So I just wanted to know more. But there's actually another game that I have always been religiously obsessed about in terms of lore, and it's Silent Hill.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially.
I haven't played any of the Silent Hill games. I really need to.
Oh, and not to be like, I think you're gonna like it, but just judging from your the taste that I know, and
Hmm.
you like actually seeming to be interested in like the deep dive of lore in good games, and I know good games is subjective and all that, but especially
Yeah.
Silent Hill 2, I think is gonna leave you be like, okay, I need more. I need more.
Okay. I will definitely have to check that out. Maybe I can jump to that series after I finish Resident Evil on stream. Because my plan is to play through all the Resident Evil games, mostly because I want to experience what everybody loved about Village.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
but I hadn't played any of the games before, so we're
To
5 games in now.
to be fair, you could have, and you've probably been told this already, but you could definitely have experienced that in the singular, just like going through Village and nothing else.
Yeah, yeah, I have heard that because of how sort of um, just random the Resident Evil lore is, how disconnected each of the games are,
Mm.
that you could experience that game on its own. Because I guess some elements are a bit of a retcon.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, I maybe you would like, you would do good playing 7 as well because it is like some of the same characters. But and I argue that 7 is the best in the entire. I know some people are gonna be like, what, and like hate me for not taking 1, 2, 3 or whatever. But I personally
Mhm.
7 like at least the first half of 7 is like chef's kiss, and then the second half is like that's when it turns like typical Resident Evil action shooter nonsense where I completely lose interest. Uh,
Yes.
but the first half where they're like in the deep pits of horror, I am just like I am 100% there, and I think it was so refreshing to see that the series still had it after all these years, especially after
Mhm.
5 and 6, which are I haven't played them. I've just seen playthroughs because woofa woofa. I just can't be bothered.
Objectively terrible so far. I
Yeah.
do play. I do plan on playing through 6 just because I gave up on 5 halfway through because I got so frustrated with it. So I feel like I owe it to the series to play through 6 all the way. But
Very.
mechanically, they're just atrocious.
They're just so silly, and I don't even say silly in an affectionate way. And like if there's people out there who
Yeah.
freaking love those games, I don't judge. I don't judge. I have silly entertainment that I love. So I super get it, but it didn't click for me. And I've barely played Devil May Cry, but 6 gives me big Devil May Cry vibes where it's just over the top. It's like Bayonetta Devil May Cry over the top nonsense. Just in Resident Evil.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know I think there's some connection between Devil May Cry and Resident Evil, right? Like didn't they use the like the engine that they developed for RE4 ended up
Oh.
being used for the
Maybe?
first Devil May Cry or something like that. Like that's why they have some similar mechanics in places.
No.
I've never played the Devil May Cry games, but I remember hearing somebody talk about this in like a history of Resident Evil thing.
Not to not to say that you're wrong, but I feel like Devil May Cry 1 is older than Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
Because those were all in the same era on the PlayStation 2, but I could be wrong. I always get my timelines wrong, so I'm not gonna say definite like no, but it sounds weird to me that Devil May Cry 1 is newer than Resident Evil 4,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
maybe it was the second one.
I have no
The second
idea.
one was that was 03. I don't know. I think it was. I was watching Noah Caldwell Gervais. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he
No.
does like multiple hour long, deep dives into series. And his video on Resident Evil was really good at helping me sort of retain information from game to game.
Yeah, that makes sense, because even when I went to play Village, it was 3 years since 7 came out now or something. I think 7 came out in like 2019 or something. Or maybe actually, no, 2018 I think it came out.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's old. It's older than you think. It's older than I think. But in Village, I was like, what? You play the same character as from 7? I had no clue. I was completely clueless, and I had forgotten like 90% of what happened in 7. So yeah, it's so much nonsense and over the top stuff going on that it's hard to keep it all under lock and key.
For sure.
Alrighty. I mean, I can feel that we can sit and talk about this forever. Maybe we just need to do like a side podcast about gaming, because
Yeah,
we're like
right.
so far off track already. So I'm just gonna reel it back in and start with the first question of, when did you know you were perfectly queer?
Yeah. So yeah, I wrote down some stuff, and I'll just say that, and then sort of continue from that. I didn't put the pieces together until I was around like 23 or 24 completely. I didn't really have a chance to explore my like sexuality until a few years ago. I was previously in like the most cishet like trad dad marriage for a while, and had an amazing kid, and I love him very much. But the marriage side of that was not for me. So after that ended, I sort of got to, actually rediscover myself, the individual. Yeah, I had the Terry. I wrote here. I had the stereotypical fall in love with your best friend by panic experience.
That's been such a like line through this entire series so far. Like almost everyone, if not everyone, has fallen in love with a close friend of themselves in like their teenage years.
Yeah, it's a very universal,
Yeah.
like sort of by pan at least experience, which I feel like may contribute to some of the bad rap that bi people get. There's in certain circles of the LGBTQ community, bi people sort of get shat on sometimes as, I don't
Yeah.
know, being
On the fence.
yeah, on the fence, or what is the word I'm looking for? Not
Indecisive.
I guess just being horny. Just being
Oh,
horny.
wow. That's
Like
news to me.
overly promiscuous. Maybe that's the word that I'm looking for.
Oh, okay.
Like stealing people's partners and stuff like that.
Oh my god.
It's a stereotype for sure.
But
I'm
even more than a stereotype, because I know that stereotype can be like harmful and hateful, but in my mind, stereotypes are kind of like wholesome tropes. That's how I wish they were treated. Like when you say someone is a stereotype, yeah, and that's how I always view it. So when people say that about negative stuff, I'm like, no, that's just hateful. But I do realize the stereotype
right.
to a lot of people means like negative connotations too. But yeah, I wish we could reclaim stereotype as just like harmless.
That would be nice. And then we can come up with some really ugly word for what was previously hateful stereotypes.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just hateful. Like, it's usually like homophobia, racism, etc. It's the isms.
Um, yeah, so continuing on that, I figured out the whole bi pan thing. Um, Gender wise, I'm 31 and I'm still gender confused sometimes. I'm very clearly a masculine person, but sometimes I just want to be somewhere in between.
Mm.
Uh, Getting comfortable with that is a very recent thing. And like, I feel like having so many trans friends over the last few years, especially online, has like really helped me get more comfortable with exploring that. Because yeah, it's just not, especially cis men. We grow up. I don't know if this is true everywhere, but especially in America, like I'm from the South. I grew up Baptist. You know,
Mm.
we have a very the upbringing is not conducive to really exploring yourself. Like when you're raised as a cis man, especially here, there are certain expectations on how you're gonna act and grow up, and you're not supposed to really think about any of that. Yeah, sort of breaking free from that mold has been really nice. Um, but yeah, looking back, it's clear my sexuality and even my gender as early as like high school uh, were not standard. I just never really explored it until the past few years.
Mm. Bringing it back to the whole like people, both straight and queer people judging bi slash pan people. Do you have you experienced as like a mask person? Have you experienced that differently? You think than women being bi or pan? Do you feel like you
Probably.
meet that differently and are met differently?
Yeah. I mean, almost definitely. Like I'm an intersectionalist, so I really, uh try to appreciate the differences between different sort of subsets of minority groups and how those experiences lead to different outcomes.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm sure when it comes to how people think of, it's weird. So like and this is speaking strictly from like stuff I've read and videos I've watched. I think, oh, what is her name? Uh Sorry, I'm trying to remember a YouTube channel's name. They Verily Bitchy, I think is their name. Verily Bitchy. They do like a ton of videos on like the bi experience and
Mm.
specifically being thinking they were a lesbian and then like coming to terms with actually being bisexual and that sort
Mm-hmm.
of thing. Um, but like if you're bi as a woman, um, from men, you get shat on because like you like women and you're sort of like um there's this stereotype of bi women being like we talked about, sort of promiscuous, that
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
is true for bi men as well. um and not that the stereotype is true, but that stereotype is there for bi
Yeah.
men as well. But for women it's much more of an objectification, like especially in like poly communities, which I'm, I guess, vaguely in. Um, like bisexual women are referred to as unicorns because like everybody seeks them out for their poly relationships. um and there's this objectification that goes on there that is just not really there for bi men.
Yeah.
With bi men it's more people, I think, questioning your whether you are actually queer.
Yeah.
Like that is something I have always dealt with since coming out. It didn't help that when I first came out, I was married, so I like, was the most hetero passing possible.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, there's definitely a lot of there are a lot of spaces in the queer community where bi men are seen as just like attention grabbing rather than like valid at first. Like there's this sort of knee jerk reaction, like because you're a man, you're trying to, you know, come in here and take up space, I guess,
That
which
is
is,
wild.
a valid knee jerk reaction, I think, based on, sort of society at large. But yeah, that is definitely a struggle. That sort of like knee-jerk invalidation.
It's, to me, I guess, it's so weird because why? I mean, I know that there is a 1% out there who will do like anything for attention, but let's just like push those
Mhm.
aside and think that most folks they just want to vibe, they just want to live their life and be somewhat content. And
Mhm.
I, it's so weird to me to immediately draw the conclusion that, oh, this person claims to be bi. Yeah, they're doing it for attention. They're doing it to hog all our dudes and still have cred with the gals. And it's like,
Mhm.
I think they just have that preference. it's it's so like when I've had like a long journey myself in my own like preferences, and I had like the very classical route of going from didn't know because like as a child I wasn't really aware of like being straight or bi or whatever, like that wasn't important to me. And then like in my teens I had the classic like, okay, I guess I'm bisexual because I've had boyfriends, and only true lesbians uh, have only female
Yep.
partners or female presenting or whatever. um, and then the whole baked in misogyny that comes with that. And then it wasn't until like my early 30s that I was like, damn, no, dude, I'm actually a lesbian because I just don't care for guys that way or mask presenting people. It's just not my cup of joe. And
Yeah.
uh during like that journey, I too like luckily never had any personal encounters because I wasn't like in a lot of queer environments because I come from a very small country, so it's difficult to find those kind of cliques here.
Uh-huh.
But just listening to other people's stories and your own now, it is a really running theme of, and I say this with like quotation mark, fully queer people, like people who are completely gay or completely lesbian or whatever, that they judge bi and pan people like lesser than, just like the straight people do. And that frustrates me
Yeah.
so much, which is why when I went to put this entire thing together this month, I really tried to reach out to people who I either knew or had like the feeling just from how they present themselves online that they are either bi or pan, because I was like, I'm just not gonna have only lesbians on the show because that will seem incredibly jaded.
Yeah.
So
Although, I mean, to be fair, lesbians are like 90% of the content generators on Twitter. That's like
yeah.
lesbians and specifically trans women are just like they're the meme creators. They're masters of the internet. It's great.
There, it is weird, like once you open that lid, like we just seem to crawl out of there like ants.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's one lesbian, oh shit, there's another, and oh my god, there's so many of them. It is really weird once you become aware that like, oh my god, they're everywhere.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it is interesting the thing that you mentioned with like objectification, because I do know a thing that especially like femme presenting bis or pans go through is straight dudes being like, oh, so that means I can have you and like one more. That kind of thing, where like, oh, we can like
Mhm.
invite Clara over for Saturday night spice in our bedroom, and it's
Yep.
it's so wild to me that that's like the first. I guess it just speaks of how sexualized our society is, like how everyone, because
Yeah.
just even our sexuality, like it's in the word, but even in our how we identify is always sexualized because people immediately go to who and how we sleep with people,
Yep.
instead of like, no, I just want to like hold hands or look at the stars or watch movies together or just not eat dinner alone after 2 fucking years of pandemic. Like, it's not only having sex, or for some people
Yeah.
it's not never having sex because they just don't care about it. It's not for them. So it's wild. It's really wild.
Yeah. And that's compounded I okay, it is a little stereotypical of me to bring up capitalism because I always bring up capitalism everywhere. But it's compounded by our value being associated with our gender and sexuality, like gender and sexuality being these like inextricable things in Western society because
Mm.
of our sort of history. with patriarchy and all that. Um, because we value, and I don't want to say everybody actually does this, but because like society at large values women as lesser than,
Mm.
and specifically as like sexual objects for men in these sort of like transactional heterosexual relationships that we've had ingrained in our society for you know centuries.
Yeah.
uh, that same sort of like transactional nature of the relationship gets applied to um, anybody who is attracted to men, if
Mm.
that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you become valued as this like uh, sexual object rather than as an individual. So that like the unicorn thing and like the stereotypes over promiscuity and all of that stuff. Um, yeah, that stuff is compounded by being like literally valued less as an individual.
Mm. Yeah. That oh, there was another thing that came to mind that in how like we approach like or we I say we but like general society approach
Mhm.
gender and gender norms and all of that. Um, and I've noticed that even like women flirting with women, some of those women who have like come onto me do it in the exact same way that a straight dude would do, which is like not to be mean, but it can be a
Mm.
little sleazy and a little gross. And it's like as they think that oh I like I'm not a dude, I don't present as a man, so it's okay for me to do this. And I'm just sitting here like no, it's still weird and it's still inappropriate and it's not charming. And I was wondering if you had like any experience with that of like how like people come onto you knowing your preferences. Do you feel like
Mhm.
that shifts anything when they know, or like have you noticed that it actually actively does shift something?
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's interesting that you point that out because that is something that um, is a good thing to remember that like when we're talking about uh, how the patriarchy presents itself and that sort of thing and those like negative outcomes as a result of that, that's tied to masculinity itself, not
Mm,
like to people who are amab necessarily.
mm,
um but yeah, anybody who like takes on those masculine signifiers can cause that sort of uh damage in their interactions in that same way. So it's interesting that you brought that up about I guess like butch lesbians or like people interacting with you in that way, because I haven't heard that much before from
yeah,
people.
yeah.
um
It is interesting, and it's also weird because it made me very aware that the way that we, and I say we as like a Western culture because that's my experience, like personal experience, we we flirt from a very masculine perspective, like regardless of gender. I feel like we have this very like headstrong approach, and um it's as if people think that once they're not perceived as like a threat that like cis men can be perceived as, especially for women, um
mhm.
it's carte blanche on being inappropriate, and then it's on like
Mhm.
quirky and charming. And I've had some people slide into DMs and be just like, girl, no. Just
Yeah,
no.
no, no, please
Like,
no.
honey, please.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, it's that's wild. Yeah, it's how do people approach me? I feel like and maybe this is just um like maybe this is just because I tend to be around like more women than men. Like I have a lot more like female friends, especially online, um than masked friends. Um but yeah, I feel like the people who like approach me with interest uh are just sort of doing it in the like stereotypical like hetero way.
Mm,
Like I don't know if we if we want to get into like BDSM talk or anything like that. But it tends to be subs slash bottoms that are approaching me because I'm a very
mm,
masculine presenting person, and like those are just the kind of people who tend to be attracted to people who look like me. So I don't really have much of the like stereotypical like, you know, gay experience. I haven't
Mm.
had much like you know, very, you know, I haven't been approached by like bears or anything like that. You know, this is just not the type of people who I typically who are typically, you know, seeking out someone like me. And to be honestly, you know, not my type either.
Okay.
So that's fine. But yeah, I guess I there's not much unique about the way that people approach me. I do think, especially feminine presenting people, uh, feel a little more comfortable approaching bisexual men. Um,
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's generally true, or at least it has been true for me. Like I feel like, um, since I, not just since I came out, but since I started being, um, you know, very public with my sexuality, you know, like all of our, you know, typical signifiers, like the rainbow in
Mm.
the bio, you know, and all that stuff. Since I've started being really comfortable with myself and my sexuality, it seems like other people are more comfortable in approaching me because they can expect a certain level of like understanding, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, or like I don't know. And you know, that does kind of suck because it means that hetero men, I mean, do by default get a bad rap. Um, you know, hashtag not all men or whatever. But uh, you know, and there's some very valid concerns there that cause that divide. But yeah, I mean, it has been easier for me to like get approached and approach people since coming out, if that makes sense.
No, it makes 100% sense because I know from personal experience and also just from like I don't know how present this is now because full disclosure I don't like I don't hang with them kids, so I don't know what's like pop with the teens and stuff like that. But when I was a teenager, I had like a lot of girls this religious obsession with Yowie, and Sean and I like gay manga, like male gay manga.
Yeah.
And I wish I could remember better. Like, I think I came across like an article or something where someone really broke down why that is, like why especially teenage girls gravitate towards this. And I'm like brutally paraphrasing, but it has something to do with like the vulnerability that these men show. They are more feminine, like traditional femininity. Um,
Mhm.
they are more in touch with their emotions, and they are also interested in men, so they're not perceived as a threat to women because they
Yeah.
wouldn't be interested in you anyway. They want the dude. So there's like this like lovely little mishmash of everything going in there that isn't, they're not values that are taught to the average dude growing up, that you can be soft, you can be feminine, you can express your emotions. There's nothing wrong with that in like healthier way than just punching a wall or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that like if I were to guess, if I were to take like a super uneducated guess, it probably coincides with that when women learn that men are like women who are interested in men learn that men who are like either bi or pan are like have those preferences, they also probably kind of apply those expectations that, oh, this is a dude that's in touch with his emotions and he clearly, you know, is okay with being soft. And I think again women like probably apply some stereotypes from how they perceive homosexual men onto also bisexual and pansexual men.
Oh, for
So
sure.
yeah, I think at least
Yeah.
that's always been my presumption why bi men, and I'm the same. Like I have to like admit that once I learned that a cis man or mask presenting man is like is either bi or pan, I'm like, it's not because I am ever worried to be on the table because I make my preferences very clear, but it's more that I don't have to even necessarily worry about like being objectified, which you can be by a lot of cis straight
Mhm.
guys regardless. And also, I just more in my experience they are more in touch with their emotions because they've had to go through that personal journey where you have to put yourself out there to go through that like looking glass. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, it makes
And
perfect sense to me.
and that objectification can take place even like passively, right? Like
Mm,
it's just even if somebody's not approaching you in a sexual way, just the way that people interact with you generally can be different just by presenting as femme.
mm,
And yeah, on the yaoi thing or like gay hentai, uh, that there's something to be said for that like power dynamic too, because in those relationships, like obviously you're gonna have a bottom and a top, but uh, those men in those relationships are like equals in some way, like in
mm.
terms of like their sort of power hierarchy generally. Like you're not getting um you're not getting that playing off what I said about capitalism earlier. You're not getting that typical like objectification from one participant in that to the other.
Mm.
And so I think like seeing that maybe sort of an ideal form of that kind of interaction for people, like something to be aspired to, like this equality between sexual partners, if that makes sense.
I super get where you're coming from, but as someone who has read too much yaoi to be proud of it, I can say
Yeah.
that for sure there is a lot of, funnily enough, heteronormative things applied to yaoi as well.
Oh
Because
yeah.
very often, like, yaoi and shounen is made by women for women. Like, I'm generalizing, but that's
Hmm.
like the thing. As bara is gay manga made by men for men. Um,
Hmm.
and in yaoi, you can see that same power structure as if, usually, of course, the bottom in the pairing would be
Hmm.
a woman, like a cis woman, because that like bottom dude is usually like meek and shy and has to
Hmm.
be like, there's a lot of really fucking questionable things going on in yaoi in terms of power dynamics where like one's like a teacher and the other's a student, or he's like a boss and the other
Oh, for
dude is like,
sure.
there's a lot of like
Yeah,
those.
there's definitely a ton of that. A
Yeah,
ton
yeah,
of
yeah,
that.
yeah, 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 yeah. And age differences and stuff like that are questionable. So even though I super get your point, and I can see that as a teenager, you very often lack the nuances to see a lot of these problems, because I know when I read yeah, I was like, oh yeah, two hot dudes going at it. Like that's where my mind
Yeah.
went. I wasn't like,
All that matters.
I see some social structural problems here between like the boss and the employee. Like that's not where I went. Like I'm not gonna pretend I was that intelligent as a teenager. I hardly am now,
Mhm.
but um it is interesting to revisit yaoi and Shananai as an adult and be like, woofa woofa. There's a lot of heteronormative bullshit going on here.
That's very true.
Alrighty, in kind of like that same vein of um keeping it like interest in, I guess, teenage years. What was your first crush slash fascination that challenged the expectations of society?
Oh, I didn't really actively think of them as crushes at the time, but so you gave me some of these questions in advance, so I had some time to write some stuff
Mm.
down about them. But the first thing that came to mind was Justin Timberlake,
When
for
I
for
read
whatever
this,
reason.
I guffawed.
I don't know why. I
Was
think
it
at
the
the
noodle
time I
hair?
mostly, yeah, I had his hair. I
No.
wanted to be Justin
But
Timberlake. I
but
had the frosted tips.
so you look like a pack of noodles, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it was just ramen up there. Like, yeah, no, it was dark times in teenage Joe's life. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think I just really wanted to be Justin
Mm.
Timberlake, but looking back on it, yeah, I mean, I could see that have I could call that a first crush. Um, and then also like I grew up with Lord of the Rings being very central to like my understanding of fantasy and of like uh you know media in general. Like Lord of the Rings just encapsulated everything for my childhood slash teenage years for a
Mm.
while. Um, and it is at least Peter Jackson's. I mean, really, even Tolkien's original writings, but especially Peter Jackson's like the way he frames things. It was a very bisexual story, or
Yeah.
at least I mean, maybe you could call it like sapiosexual or something like that. Like there's so many male characters, and obviously you don't want to sexualize men just having
Mm.
healthy relationships with each other, but also it's fun to sexualize men having having healthy relationships with each other. uh,
Your words,
like
not mine. I don't want to be canceled on Twitter.
yeah, I can say it because I am a
Exactly.
man.
Exactly.
Um, uh, yeah, no, I mean like Frodo and Sam, obviously the ideal friendship dynamic. But I mean, you can totally imagine them, cuddling. They're so cute. It's everything that you want in a gay relationship. Um, and then I mean, Aragorn, the tender and caring top, Legolas, the androgynous power bottom, like it's everything. Uh,
Is he being a power bottom with Gimli is my question now.
I don't know. I don't know Gimli's persuasion. I feel like man,
Are,
yeah, maybe Gimli's curious a little bit.
are you telling me that you never considered Legolas and Gimli?
Not really, no. For whatever
Wow.
reason that didn't come to mind. I just don't.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, this is dwarf erasure here.
I am shook.
I don't know. I guess yeah, no, that's totally on me. I just never saw Gimli as like a sexual option. That's terrible. I just disregarded him
Wow.
completely.
Yeah, you were like, nah, that tiny old man not doing it for me.
Yeah, that unkempt beard, as beautiful as it is, not my thing.
Meanwhile, teenage me was like, oh, that's perfect waist height.
Yeah, you can really pick up and throw that one. Uh, Literally. Oh my, they literally do that in the
Yes,
movie.
I am.
Legolas literally throws Gimli around.
I am
Oh my
shook
God.
that you haven't considered this before. I'm literally quite shook.
That's incredible. I can't believe I've never thought of this.
I feel like I just shattered your dimension or something right now.
You did. I'm gonna have to get on AO3 or something. Right.
Oh my god, there are. I've even seen fan art, like really cute fan art, like not even the typical, like, oh, here's a giant oversized donger penetrating a like million-inch asshole. Not that kind of fan art. Just like really wholesome, like Legolas leaning down to smooch Gimli, and it's just super cute. And I can't believe this has just completely missed your ship.
That's great. Yeah, that's wild. You've given me a gift here.
My pleasure. My happy pride.
Yeah, happy Pride.
But I wanted to ask, because you said you said that you, maybe more than having a crush on Justin Timberlake, you wanted to be Justin Timberlake. Are you one of those people who easily misinterpret crushes for fascination, like in terms of because I'm asking because I am that way myself, where many a times I've mistaken my insane fascination for someone because I want to embody everything they embody, and mistaken it for like, oh, I'm in love with this person. But what I'm in love with is the idea of the person, and I wish I could adopt that idea onto myself.
Oh, absolutely. I'm very, very guilty of that. Yeah. And it doesn't help, like I think some aspect of like demisexuality is also like I mean, obviously you're talking about with demisexuality like an attraction to the person romantically, generally before you have these sexual feelings.
Mm.
Um, uh, the way that often presents for me is I will like meet people who I'm extremely interested in, maybe because I want to be doing something they're doing, or like because I don't know, they've got a lot of projects going on that interest me and I want to get like really involved in their life, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or you know, we share all these same interests, and you know, maybe they know about a lot of stuff that I'm interested in, and that you know, turns into romance, which then turns into that sexual attraction. And then there's also a side of the confusing love for infatuate, or love for like uh I forget the word you used, like obsession or whatever. Um,
Fascination.
there's an yeah, fascination. There's another side of that that is also kind of like narcissistic. Like there have definitely been men that I've met who are like more attractive versions of myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just like I I am in love. I need to be with this person as much as I want to be them. Yeah, so that yeah, there's sort of two components of that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. For me, it really took me like finding myself, like no matter how hokey that sounds, but I really had it was a big part of finding who I am and who I like to actually address how easily I seem to fall in love with people. I was like, what the fuck is up with that? Because I clearly was not in love with them. Because, you know, you can tell when like 2 weeks later you're like, oh, get the fuck out of my life, dude. You're so over
Yeah.
it. And just to be super clear, more often than not, I've not been mean. It's just that it's all happened in my head, and I've been like super obsessed about someone in my head. So it's not like I've
Yep.
approached 50 people. Like, oh, I think I'm in love with you. Like that's very rare.
Oh
But
no, I do the same thing.
yeah, yeah,
I'll
yeah.
like get really attached to a person, like just fall deeply into, I guess, infatuation would be the
Mm-hmm.
better word, with them. And then, you know, after the scenario has played out in my head that like, oh, well, this wouldn't actually work. What am I
Yeah,
doing? It's like, okay, I never think about this person again.
when once the stormful debris has like settled after the raging crush, I'm like, ah, okay. And if I can still see something, I'm like, okay, you know what? This is at least a friendship that I can see something here. Like if we're both vibing with this, but very often I'm
Mhm.
just like, I'm just this is just my brain being absolutely fucking hungry for validation or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was so interesting for me at least to, at the other side of that, actually discover what kind of people I liked because it wasn't what I thought at all.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'm still sort of like rediscovering that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, I'm definitely like, I don't know. I've been single for a while now, so every once in a while I'll just like come across a person and like feel a thing, and I'll be like, oh, well, that's interesting. I didn't really know I was okay. That's cool. Let's explore this for a little bit. Yeah, it's interesting how that's always changing. I'm a big proponent of the theory that sort of sexuality is a fluid thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it can change over time. So yeah.
Yeah, I personally am like I am very of that philosophy myself. Not because I necessarily know if I myself will ever subscribe to it. I know that my journey was fluid until it felt more solid because I feel very secure
Hmm.
where I am now. Like I'm no longer questioning um, myself, and like that might change, but I feel very secure in a way that I haven't in my entire life. So I feel like my journey was fluid and then it became solid. But
Yeah, for
I
sure.
I definitely I had a similar conversation with one of my other guests in, but I think it was more in terms of gender fluidity, where people are
Mhm.
so obsessed with being able to label you. So if your gender is a journey, people will just drop off because they aren't willing to put in that extra mile to quote unquote keep up with you, which to me is so weird because if I have a person that I really love and like let's say when I met them, they presented as female, and then during our friendship, they're like, oh, maybe I'm non-binary, because they kind of like a lot of people go through. I'm not saying this like bisexuality is that like mid-station, but a lot of people go through bisexuality before they find out they're fully gay. A lot of people
Oh, for
go
sure.
through being non-binary before they realize they're fully the opposite gender.
Yep.
And so let's say you meet someone who's like they're female, then they're non-binary, and then they're male, and like if even if I don't love them because it's not my place to judge or whatever, but if I love someone and have them in my life, you bet your booty I'm gonna just keep up with that journey, because it doesn't matter to me. It matters to them. Like, it's not my business if, you know, they're X, Y, or Z. It matters that they're happy and content.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if that like true deep romantic attraction is there, then that force is, you know, going to be strong enough to sort of weather that tide. I mean, I can definitely also see, like, you know, people change over time. Like in my own like marriage, me like you know, questioning my sexuality and stuff like that was enough to sort of break that attachment up. So I definitely also see that, you know, people can change over time, and sort of those relationships can. But I mean, you know, maybe there's an argument to be made that those were never, you know, true love or romance if you believe in the the like true love sort of thing. You know, maybe those were never like true love to begin with. But you know, um, I just, you know, I I'm big on just like you know, feel the vibes, and go with it, and do whatever makes you happy. And if you're in a relationship where there's that reciprocal romance, then it'll probably weather just about anything.
Yeah, yeah. I just feel like I have to reemphasize that I was speaking like strictly friendship level, because I know a lot of people just aren't willing to put in like the extra mile
Oh
to
yeah.
keep someone, not even like romantically, but just like on a friendship level, keep someone in their life because they're going through a journey. Because the whole romantic aspect to it, I can like I've gone that down that rabbit hole many times, and like with my current partner, I've even had like the thought, what if she one day is like she want to be he? Like, how the fuck am I gonna react to that? Because I'm still like, I still love her.
Yeah.
So that's because in the society we live in, uh, it's not like the case isn't shut close for me, like, oh no, but I'm a lesbian, so bye.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it wouldn't be that easy for me.
Yeah.
But I just felt like I had to emphasize that my point was, because I don't want to sound like I'm judging someone who left a relationship because one of their partners like went through a change, because it is also like many reasons to why a person can't come with you on that journey in a romantic and sometimes sexual level, and that I
Yeah.
have full respect and understanding for. But I was referring specifically to friendships where you don't have in most cases the involvement of romantic and sexual nature. So
Yeah. Yeah, for
it
sure.
shouldn't matter
It
like
shouldn't, yeah, it shouldn't
how
matter
your
at
friend
all in that case.
presents.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree.
What's the most positive impact being queer has had on you?
Um, yeah, so once again, I'll sort of start with what I had written down, and then
Mm-hmm.
you know, we'll go into whatever. Yeah, so I've always had tremendous privilege. Not to say I haven't had my own hardships, but for most of my life, I've just been a white, straight passing cis guy. So it's really easy when you're in that position to be socialized into certain patterns of thinking that are really harmful, not just in the immediate to those that are different from you, but to yourself in the long run.
Mm.
So I think one of the biggest things being queer has done is taught me empathy, um, not just for others, like because now that I'm like around other queer people, you know, like I'm able to see all of these other life experiences, sort of, uh, and like experience them vicariously and understand the struggles that other people are going through.
Mm-hmm.
But also like with myself, like we sort of touched on this earlier, but when you especially in the West, like here in America, and even more especially here in Texas. You know, if you're AMAB, you are very much raised not to sort of question how society at large works, especially with like regard to your place in it. You know, you're supposed to work and go to church and have a wife and not have feelings and
Mm.
do your job and all of this stuff. And all of that can lead to some really, really negative outcomes that you see statistically. And not to get like too deep, but like cis men are extremely prone to, especially like adolescent cis men are very prone to suicide
Mm.
in certain areas of the U.S., especially like Texas, um, and that comes from all of that socialization where you're not only not empathetic with others, but you're not allowing yourself to examine, you know, your negative experiences,
Mm.
negative ideation, and that sort of thing. And it wasn't really until I became comfortable with, um, you know, like my sexuality, or just like acknowledging that I may not be you know, the sort of heteronormative person that I grew up as, acknowledging that I was different in some way,
Mm-hmm.
um, really helped me grow out of some of those negative patterns of thinking. Like I feel like if I never realized that about myself, I probably never would have, you know, gone to therapy like I needed to do over the last couple years.
Mm.
Like I can't imagine, um, like and I'm very open about this, so I feel comfortable talking about it. But like I used to be an alcoholic. At this point, I'm 10 months sober, um, so that's fucking awesome.
Yeah, congrats.
But you know that alcoholism, that's a coping mechanism.
Mm.
You know, when you don't have these other outlets or like people to talk to, or you're not comfortable examining that about yourself, it's really easy to turn to those things. And so, yeah, being queer has had an extremely positive impact on me in that, you know, it's made me a lot healthier both mentally and physically, having like specifically having other queer people in my life and like experiencing that validation with each other, and learning to be empathetic.
Mm. That's that's really that's such a nice answer. I mean, there's no right or wrong answers, but I really like how you're explaining that just being queer got you more in touch with yourself at the end of the day, and
Yeah,
allowing yourself to be like your full self, or however you want to phrase that. And I think
yeah.
that's really, really neat because, and again, I can't stress that stress enough that there's no right or wrong answers, but I think it's easy for a lot of people to say that like being queer has um, affected things like outside of themselves, because it's easier for us as humans to address situations around us instead of inside us.
Mhm.
And you just like going to the core of it, but like no, it helped me address several things in my personal life. And I think that's such a beautiful perspective to have on being queer. I just really like that.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. It's just it's yeah. It's been a great journey. I'm like every part of my life is so much healthier. Uh, you know, now that I've sort of discovered and continue to discover who I am.
Mm, yeah, it really does bring. I mean, it's in hindsight. I guess it seems so obvious, but when you're deep in it, it is hard to see and very much appreciate just the level of peace that you arrive at. And I'm not saying that peace is consistent. Like, of course, there will, like, life is constantly going on, so you will get new things that will tremble your earth or whatever. But just
Yeah,
to arrive at least some form of sanity, and like you at least undid one really like big fucked up spool of thread where you found both ends and you could like, oh, okay, I'm here, this is where I am right now. You arrived at something, and that feels right.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And you're right. Like, I mean, obviously, the flip side of that is that like, once you're out as a queer person, there's all of these other, cultural things that come with that.
Mm.
Specifically, like living in the U.S. now,
Yeah.
with everything going on with the GOP, and living in a red state. Um, uh, yeah, there's a lot of bad shit going on that is specifically targeting queer people. I mean, like I said, I'm sort of gender questioning, but I'm not like out as a trans person or
Mm.
anything. If I was, I mean, obviously my experience right now would be a little tumultuous where I live.
Yeah.
Uh, my well, we don't have to get into that necessarily, but yeah, there's a lot of shit going on that makes it really hard to just exist as a queer person. But as an existentialist and as an optimist, I think it's really important to focus on and dig into those positive aspects of that experience, because that can at least help give us the energy to get through the hard shit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree so much on this because it is a tricky conversation to navigate because like I told you before we went live, is that I am a-okay with like my guests touching on any subject, but there are just subjects that are so gruesome that I am at a loss for words, and what is going on in the US right now is one of those where I am
Yeah,
just like, oh, like I don't know what to say that hasn't already been said, but I am very upset and like annoyed isn't even the right word because it's way beyond being annoyed, but
yeah,
just
it's
enraged, I guess.
infuriated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, enraged about it. But I am a little similar to you in that I try to bring positivity to the field, especially on my Twitter. I even made a tweet about it as late as today because people on Twitter are
Yeah, I saw that.
constantly negative and discourse, 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 and what's the flavor of the week of being insulted and offended, and who's privileged now, and it's every week it's the same. And
Yeah.
I I'm sure some people may be sitting there in the shadows like, oh my god, why isn't Joss like giving her two hot cents on this and blah blah blah? Like, why isn't she speaking up? Why isn't she retweeting me? And it's like, first off, I'm a fucking dumbass Norwegian from a country with 5.5 million people, where most of us are white, most of us are straight, most of us are this, most of us are rich, and when I say
Yeah.
most of us, I certainly fucking don't address myself. But I am just
Mhm.
so what most people will say incredibly fucking privileged that what am I gonna contribute to this conversation that more often than not does not like uh I mean, what I can say is that yeah, this is fucked up. I don't support these shitty people. And hey, if you're a racist, a misogynist, a homophobe, a turf, whatever, you can get the fuck off because this place isn't for you. And I do that regularly. I make those
Yeah.
tweets where I'm like, hey, if these are your values, if you want to call them that, then please leave because I don't want you here. But I also don't want my
Yeah.
platform to be just this rage cyst of regurgitated anger because you need healers, man. You need people who are just like, you know what? I know things are shit, but there is beauty out there. So please just let me show you some of that beauty so you can take off your mask for a second and breathe in fresh air and go back into the battle.
Yeah, exactly. No, describing it that way is perfect. Like there's a time and a place for everything, and like we need spaces where we can go to recharge and be positive and lift each other up so that we can go back out and fight for the shit that matters.
Mm.
Because we do have to go out there and fight. We do have to, you know, I, unfortunately, literally in the U.S., the term like going out and fighting in the trenches might be applicable.
Oof, yeah.
But um, uh, there's a time and a place for getting into a conservative space, and you know, I am not advocating for violence on Twitch. Um, but and then there's another time and a place where you need to be able to you know relax and recharge, and like you said, take a breath of fresh air before you get back into the fray.
Yeah, and I can at least only I can only speak for myself here, but I know that I am what I would call like a quiet fighter, where I
Yeah.
fight with love. Like that sounds so hippie and hokey, but I like through my art, I try to present my values and what I believe in and what I stand for, and that's more sincere. Like that's how I genuinely stand up for myself and others around me, instead of
Mhm.
this performative bullshit that 90% of Twitter is doing, because
Oh, for sure.
it's just
Yeah.
like screaming and yelling and like, who are we hating this week, and not actively doing anything, because nobody fucking cares what happens on Twitter at the end of the day.
Yeah, on Twitter specifically, it is so much just just it's just pandering,
Yeah.
and it's sad and obnoxious. Um, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. Like the whole Twitter thing is a thing that I touch upon it so often, because it is a place where I spend a lot of my time because of my work. But man, oh man, people just need to touch on grass.
Mhm. Yeah, like it's I'll admit it. It's really really fun to shit on Nazis. It's great. It's super fun and very good, and it'll get you plenty of likes. Um, but I mean, if that's all you're doing 24/7, it's so tiresome. Uh,
Yeah.
you gotta have that recharge time, or at least have places to go, like twitch.tv/Jossum, where you can where you can recharge.
Alrighty, let's really back in once more. Holy shit, we are really good at going on tangents.
Yeah,
Um,
that's okay.
what has been the most important queer representation in media to you? Fictional or real? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, so this was a hard one, because obviously I've only had the last like 7 or 8 years to be really um, mindful about queer representation, because that's roughly how long I've spent discovering myself.
Mm.
Um, so thinking back on just like what made me more comfortable at exploring myself growing up. The one that stood out for me, strangely enough, was Monty Python. I mean, it makes sense. Like almost all of them are gay, but like their art in particular, their comedy, uh, it's just very queer. Like even if they were straight men, like those jokes, the way they frame a joke and like what they decide is funny and what isn't
Mm.
is just it's very queer. I don't know how to describe it other than that. And I do mean queer in the LGBTQ sense, not in like weird or
Yeah, weird.
outlandish. Uh, yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of it is dated now, but especially for their time, like having people do do shit that challenges the norms in a way that is still entertaining for normies
Mm.
can be so effective at sort of bridging those gaps and like winning that soft power that we need, in order to be like effective as a larger group, and even as a political movement. um yeah, that's really important. So for whatever reason, Monty Python was the thing. And I watched Holy Grail so many times growing up. That, and I probably watched Meaning of Life like way earlier than I should have.
I have to admit that my knowledge on Python is pretty limited. I also watched the Holy Grail a million times, because in my teens I had a
Mhm.
boyfriend who was just as obsessed with them as you seem to be. So I
Yeah,
did watch that, and I found it very funny. And I
yeah.
did watch Life of Brian like maybe twice, but I think when I watched it, I was too uneducated to be like, I don't get this whole Jesus thing. Like, I just don't, I don't get it.
Yeah.
So
The Life of Brian is thoroughly underrated. Like it's such a good critique of modern Christianity. It's great.
Yeah, it's definitely a movie where I feel like if I watch it today, I would understand it better because I have much more like world knowledge now. But as
Uh-huh.
a like a 16-year-old or whatever I was in this tiny ass country, I was like, nah, I don't get it.
Yeah. And while the representation was maybe not as tactful as it should have been, they did have one trans character. I mean, granted, played by a cis man, but
Is that the
you know,
mother?
there was some one of the revolutionaries is he or she, I guess, decides midway through the movie, she like opens up to them about being a woman, and they like refer to her as a woman for the rest of the movie,
Oh,
and it's like
interesting.
it's never like played for laughs or anything besides like the initial, you know, bringing it up. But it's not
Yeah,
like a bit that they do for the rest of the movie. It's just like, oh, actually, she's a woman, and then that's it. And then like just use she her pronouns for the rest of the movie. And this was like the 80s, uh, which is wild.
yeah, that's interesting. And I think, funnily enough, I think you could have that be a relatively realistic approach to a lot of things where you're joking like you can even be like let's say you had a friend named Bob and you were into
Uh,
Bob and then your other friends were like, "Oh yeah, you're totally into Bob," but they don't actually know that you're into Bob. They're just like fucking around with you and they're like, you want to smooch up with Bob? Yeah, and like every time you're together they give you shit, and then one day you're like, "Yeah, I'm actually into Bob," and they're like, "Oh, okay, that's cool," and then it stops being a
okay,
joke.
yeah,
And that like
yeah,
that stuff
exactly.
happens in real life too.
No, you're totally right. Yeah,
So I think, yeah, I think that's like more believable than we initially think.
yeah, yeah. It's I mean, it's good to just have stuff like that for something to be like just played in a comedic like or even dramatic like any sort of media representation to be represented in a way that it is normal. Like it's not I mean obviously there's some benefit to having things highlighted in and framed in a certain way, like really called out in certain media.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a place for that for sure. But especially when it comes to like onboarding people to like understanding maybe not the like LGBTQ experience, but that like queer people exist and are
Mm-hmm.
normal people. Just presenting those issues as normal people things. Like you don't have to be, you know, I mean, I am a socialist, but you don't have to be a you know a crazy pinko commie to be gay. You know, normal there there are gay liberals. You know, like
Yeah, yeah.
and people need to see that. Like um, a more recent one, like Schitt's Creek, was massively popular with you know pretty much every demographic here in America, or at least anybody with like an HBO subscription.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I mean they have just a ton of like gay characters and queer jokes and stuff like that, and it's never played as like you know this is a specifically queer moment for queer people. It's just this queer person is making a joke.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's totally normal.
It's not like what I feel is like every American sitcom in the 90s where all the minorities were played for laughs.
Yes, exactly. Or like that minority experience was the entire focus of having that character in the show. Like
Yeah,
they existed strictly to be the token.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
There
yeah.
was a lot of that in the 90s. I mean, there
Oh
still
yeah,
is,
there still
but
is, but it was way worse back then. Like
yeah.
that's a conversation I had recently with someone where I was like, yeah, people are upset today about like our lack of progress, and you know that's fair. If we're not upset, then you know we stagnate and we just accept status quo, which is it shouldn't be accepted. But holy cannoli, do we just need to go back 10 years and look at some episode of Big Bang Theory and be like, we've gone places, dude.
Exactly. That's I mean especially in terms of like politics here in the US. There are so many I have because my brother is younger and trans. I have a lot of like zoomer trans friends from Twitter and stuff like that. Um and there are so many and not just trans, but like zoomer friends and mutuals and stuff like that in
Mm.
general. Um but there are so many people who like didn't grow up experiencing like early 9/11 America and stuff like that. That's like if you guys could just see the progress that we've made since the 90s, like you would have so much more hope for the fight ahead because it's so easy to get like doomer pilled, and
Yeah.
just be sad all the time.
Mm,
But like if you look at the greater arc of history, we have made so much progress. Like there's never going to be a moment to stop pushing forward.
yeah.
I don't believe that that's a thing that can exist, but yeah, we've made there's so much to be hopeful about.
Oh man, I need to get on whatever positive train you're on because I could do with some of that hopeful outlook.
Yeah.
You of course previously mentioned Lore Club as a big
Mhm.
passion project, but I'm gonna ask you anyway if you have other passion projects relevant to being queer, or if you wanna expand upon Lore Club.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. My sort of production company, the Fanet, which is just THEFANET.com, thefanet.com. Um, I've been working on that in some form basically since the year that I started getting comfortable with myself. It was sort of me like when I realized I was different in some way, like I needed some outlet to express that. And so I started making like my own music. I used to be in a band like in high school and college. I was in multiple bands actually. But I I wanted to get into audio production so that I could mix and master my own music and stuff like that, and started putting out my own stuff. And then that turned into podcasts. And then Alex and Jonathan, my co-creators, co-collaborators, got involved, and that turned into like producing music and art with them and sample packs and all this other stuff. And so the Fanet has been sort of my creative outlet this whole time. I've been exploring myself, and now um, um, Lore Club is just the most current uh, iteration of that. But yeah, very much that's been sort of my little bastion of um, creative expression as I figure out like ooh woo my feelings.
Your feelings. that's so that's so crude.
uh, ooh woo my feelings. Yeah, I mean, it's true though. Yeah, I mean, if you haven't listened to my first album as a Mapper, which is my sort of like emo indie rock project that I did first, it's very much that.
Can you tell how much your creative process and outlet has changed as you have gotten older and like discovered yourself more?
Yeah. Um it's interesting. So like I want to say I've gotten more confident with it. But at the same time I've become like you get less confident in some ways. Like it's yeah. Yeah, I think as you learn more about yourself, there's this like push and pull of um you know, you want to create stuff that's about that expresses the feelings that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And as you're learning about yourself, especially when it comes to being queer, um, those feelings are going to be, you know, varying levels of socially acceptable. um, Especially when it comes to like falling in love with your friends or
mm.
being attracted to men in general, as a guy, or not feeling like a guy sometimes, that sort of thing. All of those confusing feelings, um, putting those to word and then like singing them over music that you've written is this level of vulnerability that is like I can't compare it to anything else. I don't have any other experiences that have made me that vulnerable.
Mm.
Um, but at the same time, like once you get into a project like that and you put something out there, um, the confidence that comes with being like truly out, if you want to use that word, or truly open about yourself, and like realizing that you're capable of creatively expressing yourself in that way. Um, that confidence is huge, and then it makes it easier to do it next time, you know? So like I've developed enough of a, I've eliminated enough sort of um sort of blocks, sort of inhibitions along the way that now, as I've gotten more comfortable with myself, it's even easier for me to just put something out there and be like, okay, I don't give a fuck if anybody makes fun of me for this, or says something negative or thinks that it's shit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's me and it's what I want to make, and it makes me happy. So there. And sometimes that's still not true. Sometimes I still want to, cry in a corner and be embarrassed. But it gets easier. The crying happens less often the more you do it.
Yeah, no, I am. I see where you're coming from. I am. I think that's a very sweet way of addressing it, like how you do things with more confidence, because it truly does show, I think, in no matter what you do, if it shows that you yourself believe in it,
Hmm.
compared to if you're just posing. And I'm not shitting on posters because I've been a big poster and I probably still post in a lot of ways. But
Yeah.
there's just something so charming about unapologetically just being like, this is me, this is what I do, take it or leave it, fuck off.
Yeah, exactly. And like other people can feed off of that energy too. Like when you see somebody creating like truly for themselves and just expressing themselves openly that way, like um that's invigorating. That's like why I like collaborating with so many people.
Mm.
Like everything I do is like me attempting to collaborate with more and more people and like share in that experience of like just being a creative and expressing yourself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so nice. I really like that. Okay, Joe, I know we could go on for forever because I am
Yeah.
having such a blast, but we are going over time soon, so I'm just gonna ask you the final question, which is, if you could go back in time and speak with your 13-year-old self, what would you say?
Yeah, man, you got me deep with this one. When I saw this question, I was like, oh damn. I just want to hug my 13-year-old self.
Oh.
Just feel like it's gonna be okay. But no, the things that it was two things that came to mind when you asked this initially. Um, your friends will have your back, at least the real ones will. If somebody judges you for being true to yourself, they're not worth your time. And it can be so easy to get caught up in like, the people that are around you immediately, the
Oh
people
yeah.
that like, you share a class with,
Mm.
or the people you're in band with, like in your particular instrument section, or like the people you go to church with. It can be so easy to think that they're the only people in the world because
Mm.
they're the only ones you really see. But they're not. Like there's other stuff out there, and especially like I had MySpace at that point in time, but like nowadays you have so many ways to engage with people who are similar to you, that like just don't waste your time on people who are shitty to you, or who make you feel bad. It is so easy to get caught up in that cycle, especially at like 13. Um, so yeah, not so much to myself, but to 13-year-olds out there. Yeah, just toss those people to the curb because they're not worth it. And also, don't be so hard on yourself when you mess up. There are plenty of opportunities along the way. You just have to be ready for them. Part of that is actually spending the time to get good at the stuff you want to be good at. But part of that is just not dwelling in the past.
Mm.
Like when I was 13, I didn't have a whole lot of failure yet. Like there are, traumatic memories I can think of, where I was in a contest or something and didn't succeed. And, I would dwell on that stuff at the time. But even growing up, like I did terribly in college. There are decisions I wish I hadn't made in the past.
Mm.
And not dwelling on that stuff is so important to freeing up the mental space you
Oh
need in order
yeah.
to be, successful at the stuff you want to be successful at. So yeah, just it's impossible to not be hard on yourself sometimes, but just try to try not to be so hard on yourself.
Yeah, no, oh, I agree so much because I do think regret can very often be a waste of time, like regretting something. Uh, but it's also important to harness uh, teaching moments from it. But you're
Mhm.
not gonna harvest anymore by repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. Like you hopefully took the initial first impression lesson, and then you're like, not gonna do that again, hopefully, and
Yep,
then move
exactly.
on and do something else because you can't go back and change it. And I say, and I generalize, but I can at least say that I love and I when I say love, I mean hate, and I get stuck in dwelling on nonsense that is utterly useless. But I'm like, but if I only could get that time machine and go back and undo that, and then it's like, well, whatever, man. Like it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. So you just buckle up and move on.
Yeah, exactly. And especially, it's especially hard for those neurodivergent of us. Like I have ADHD, I have, cyclothymia. So I deal with, that mental stuff all the time.
Mm,
And like focusing on your mental health and just identifying those triggers and not letting yourself slip into those thought patterns of
mm.
like, oh yeah, you remember that one time in sixth grade when you peed yourself in front of class? Like not not doing that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is just so important to remaining, on the track you want to be on.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Oh my god, what a nice conversation this has been, Joe. Thank you so much for
This has been a lot of
joining.
fun.
Yeah, this has been
It's been really
wonderful.
nice catching up.
Holy moly. Do you have anything you want to say before we round this off?
Um, I don't know. I feel like we got a lot of shit out there. This has basically been like a group therapy session. Um, so it's been really great. I guess, since you're all on Twitch, follow me on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/speak with animals. Um, yeah, that's really it. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah, we'll talk again soon for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me and happy Pride.
Thank you and happy Pride.
Thank you. I'll see you around.
Okay, talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye. Alrighty, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of In the Closet with. Until next time, take care of yourself, love one another, and I see you around. Bye.